The first time the Zorix Confederacy asked about Mars, the inquiry came from a junior diplomatic envoy named Cheskil, who had only just begun his interspecies rotation. He was tall, pale blue, and prone to over-explaining things, a dangerous combination, as it turned out. Cheskil leaned toward the human ambassador during the midday meal aboard the Unity orbital. "So, I've read the records on Earth's expansion history. The lunar base, the asteroid mining colonies, Neptune's helium farms, but there's a curious omission in the Mars reports. It just says classified. Incident 9XM. Would you be willing to?" Frederick Fallen dropped his fork. It was a small sound, but the silence that followed made it echo. The entire table, including representatives from 5 other species and 2 android interpreters, turned toward him. Frederick didn't speak. He picked up his fork slowly, methodically, as if afraid any sudden movement might trigger something. He wasn't old, maybe in his early 40s, but his face suddenly seemed decades older. The lines around his eyes deepened. His hand trembled just enough to betray him. "No," he said. Cheskil blinked. "I apologize, I meant no offense." Frederick stood. "Don't ask again." And that was the last anyone heard of Mars for a long, long time. It started in the year 2089 when humanity launched the first permanent settlement mission to Mars. Not an outpost, not a rotating crew, permanent. The vessel, Horizon Ark, carried 52 crew members, support techs, geologists, engineers, medics, and a rotating command team of 6. Frederick Fallen was one of the engineers. 32 years old, fresh off the Europa HAB project, still nursing a cracked rib from a mishap with a pressurized connector. The Mars team had landed without incident in the southern hemisphere, just inside the boundary of Utopia Planitia. Within 3 weeks, they'd established the primary dome and begun construction of the secondary habitat. It was going better than anyone expected. Too well, in fact. "Honestly," Frederick had said during one of their evening check-ins, "either we're finally getting good at this or something terrible is waiting to happen." The mission commander, Lieutenant Isla Grant, gave him a glare. "Don't tempt the damn planet." The first sign came on Sol 46. Frederick was out inspecting one of the atmospheric processors when he noticed something odd. His boots were sinking deeper than usual. He paused, adjusted his footing, and saw the dust shift like water around his feet. Not slide, not collapse. Flow. He activated his calm. "Isla, you seeing this on telemetry?" "Seeing what?" "Dust's moving weird. It's not dry anymore. Check your seals." "I did. They're fine. I'm telling you, it's like the soils. Breathing." They sent a drone out the next day. It didn't come back. 5 hours later, Isla ordered a manned rover to the drone's last coordinates. Frederick was in the passenger seat, monitoring data feeds while geologist Quan steered. "Should have done this from orbit," Quan muttered. "We're poking a sleeping lion with a stick." Frederick tapped the screen. "There's no lion here, just Martian soil. Keep talking like that and I'll make you walk back." They found the drone half submerged in the dust, its casing warped, not melted, warped. The metal looked like it had been pulled in multiple directions. Quan knelt next to it. No impact. No burn marks. What the hell did this? Frederick didn't answer. He was staring at the dust near the drone, no longer red but dark, almost black. Wet, then it moved. A ripple like something heavy shifting below the surface. "Back in the rover," Frederick shouted. They made it 30 meters before the rover's wheels sank into the dust like it was molasses. The engines strained. Then the rear axle snapped with a sharp metallic groan and the vehicle tilted violently. Quan hit his helmet on the dash. Blood smeared the inside of the visor. Frederick grabbed the radio. "Base, this is Rover 1. We've got a situation. I repeat, we're stuck." Quan's injured forehead laceration, disorientation. "Request immediate evac." Static. He tried again. "Nothing." "Quan, stay with me. Don't take off your helmet." Quan groaned. "Feels like." "Pressure's changing." Frederick looked around. The dust was rising now like steam. He could barely see the landscape. The sky above had gone from pale pink to deep orange. He reached for the emergency flare, yanked it free, and fired it straight up. The rescue team arrived 30 minutes later, dragging them out with winches and hauled cables. Quan had a mild concussion and required stitches, but he survived. The rover was never recovered. By the next day it was gone, not buried, gone. The terrain looked untouched. 2 weeks passed. Then the hallucinations began. Frederick was in the hydroponics bay when he saw someone in a suit standing outside the dome. No EVA scheduled. He called it in. Isla checked the logs. No one's out. Then who the hell is waving at me? She looked. Nothing. Others started reporting things. Shadows moving without light, footsteps in the corridors, whispering through the vents. The crew's medic, Dr. Renew, ran psych evaluations. Stress reactions, isolation, sensory fatigue. But then someone died. It was tech specialist Marla Vex, found in the lower corridor near the oxygen tanks. Helmet cracked from the inside. No signs of impact, her face frozen in terror. The logs showed her alone. She'd gone to check a pressure anomaly. The anomaly was never found. Command debated immediate withdrawal. Earth denied evacuation. Hold your position. Complete mission objectives. Mars anomalies are not uncommon. Isla slammed her fist on the command table. This isn't an anomaly, this is something else. Frederick leaned forward. What if it's the planet? You're saying Mars is alive, I'm saying it's reacting. We've been digging, drilling, heating up the soil. Maybe we woke something up. The next incident was worse. One of the atmospheric towers exploded, not malfunctioned, exploded. The blast killed 3, injured 7 more. Frederick lost most of the skin on his right forearm. The burns were deep, 3rd degree, and required emergency grafts using synthetic skin. He was sedated for 2 days. When he woke, Isla was sitting nearby. You're lucky, she said. Frederick's voice was raspy. Others? Gone. He looked at his arm. The skin was shiny, grafted, painful. He couldn't move his fingers yet. I saw something in the flames, he said. A shape, it wasn't fire. Don't start. I'm serious. It looked back at me. She stood. Rest, you're not helping. By Sol 92, 17 of the original 52 were dead, not all accidents. One had walked into the airlock during a dust storm. Another had dismantled the comms array with her bare hands. One crew member poisoned the water filter. Frederick was still recovering. He couldn't use his right hand, but he could walk. He spent most of his time in the observatory, staring out at the plains. Then the message came, not from Earth, not from orbit, from beneath. It hijacked the internal comm system. A voice calm, mechanical, but not from any known language. The translator struggled. The message rendered as 4 words. Leave, 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 stay. Isla played it 5 times. What the hell does that mean? Frederick answered. I think that last one wasn't for us. They decided to evacuate. Earth refused again, so Isla made a decision: unauthorized launch. Frederick helped prep the escape vessel. His arm was barely functional and he had to wear a brace, but he worked through the pain. They had 1 shot. The launch was rough. Something tried to interfere: magnetic pulses, gravity fluctuations. One of the escape pods was torn apart mid-air. But Frederick survived. Of the 16 who attempted escape, only 6 made it off Mars. Back on Earth, the survivors were quarantined, evaluated, interrogated. No one believed them. The official report blamed structural failures, psychological breakdowns, resource shortages. Frederick retired, moved to the Oregon coast, built boats for tourists. He didn't talk about Mars. Then the aliens came. First contact was peaceful. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, shared science, but eventually someone asked, not a human, Cheskil, and the entire room went quiet. The Zorix Confederacy marked the Mars incident as a Class E anomaly. Do not approach, do not inquire, do not investigate. The planet was left alone, not out of fear, out of respect. For whatever had whispered through the vents, for whatever had watched Frederick through the flames, for whatever had said stay, and for the look in Frederick's eyes when he said nothing at all. Cheskil was still staring at the now vacant seat where Frederick had been moments before. The fork lay on the table, awkward and small, as if it too had been caught off guard by the sudden silence. One of the android interpreters slowly blinked, then turned its head almost imperceptibly toward the Zorix diplomat. "You are advised," it said with mechanical neutrality, "not to pursue that line of discussion." Cheskil glanced around the room, antennae twitching. "But it's just a planet." Silence again. It was the way all of them, the humans, the androids, even the usually impassive Droxian ambassador, simply looked away, that made him more curious, not less. They didn't seem frightened. Not exactly. It was something else. Like they'd touched a wire once and learned to never, ever touch it again. 3 days later, Cheskil requested a private meeting with another human. Not an ambassador, someone unaffiliated with diplomacy or politics, someone who might be less disciplined. He found one on the orbital maintenance deck. A civilian named Lorna Hart, certified systems technician, mid-50s, gray streaks in her braid, and a welding scar that ran from her left cheekbone to the hinge of her jaw. She was halfway into the guts of a coolant relay when Cheskil approached. "I'm told you were part of the Mars Recovery Logistics Division," he began cautiously. "I was," Lorna said, "and I'm going to stop you right there. I haven't asked anything yet. Doesn't matter, you're fishing and I don't like bait. I simply wish to understand what transpired." "The official records are vague." "Good, let them stay vague." She slid further into the machine, sparks lighting up the compartment. Cheskil waited a full minute, then another. "Finally, you know, it's considered culturally offensive in my species not to answer a direct inquiry." "You'll live." More sparks. After a prolonged silence, she emerged, wiped her gloves on her pants, and finally looked at him. "You're not going to stop, are you?" "I am attempting to fulfill an interspecies cooperative research directive." She stared at him like he'd just confessed to eating gravel. "You've clearly never worked with people who lost half their team to something they couldn't name." "I have studied loss extensively." "No, you've studied it from a distance." Lorna leaned against the bulkhead, arms folded. "You ever tried to reassemble a dead man's suit, not take it off? Not clean it, reassemble it. As in, piece it together from fragments because it came back like a box of broken glass." Cheskil's mouth opened, then closed. "No, didn't think so." He tried again. "I understand this may be difficult." Difficult was trying to get permission to bury what came back. Difficult was arguing with command that we shouldn't need to match dental records for someone we saw leave the hab 10 minutes earlier. There was a long pause. "I wasn't on the surface team," she added. "I was on the resupply shuttle. We got there after the extraction, 4 days too late." "You know what we found in the primary dome?" Cheskil adjusted his posture. "I do not." "Nothing, not a body, not a tool, not a scrap of clothing, just walls, intact, power running. Air breathable. Like the place had been cleaned by something that didn't understand what should stay." He took a step closer. "The official reports do not mention because we scrubbed them." She didn't say it with pride. "We had to. We couldn't explain it." "We still can't." "Were any non-human entities involved?" "No, unless Mars counts." Cheskil opened his mouth again, but Lorna waved a hand. "Look, I'll give you something, just one thing, then you leave it alone." He nodded. One of the survivors, a guy named Raffi, he'd been on comms. Barely made it out. No physical injuries, but his brain was fried like a bad capacitor. Couldn't speak except in song lyrics, for 6 months. Then one day he just started screaming, over and over, same 3 words. What were they? It remembers me. Cheskil stood very still. What happened to him? Discharged. Moved to a climate dome in Patagonia. Last I heard, he doesn't talk to anyone. Lives with 8 dogs, sometimes paints. What does he paint? Teeth, rows of them, never a mouth. Just the teeth. Later that week, Cheskil submitted a formal request to interview Raffi. It was denied with no explanation. 2 days after that, he tried to access Earth's deep archives on the Mars incident. Blocked. He attempted a backchannel through a Terran-Orlian data exchange node. The moment he typed Mars, the system crashed. He began to lose sleep. Or the Zorix equivalent, which involved a kind of meditative nutrient bath. His thoughts spiraled. Why would a species as reckless as humanity, who'd once detonated a fusion bomb in low orbit just to prove they could avoid discussing a single failed mission. What could possibly be worse than the disasters they talked about openly? He met with his supervisor, diplomatic overseer Gell. "You're obsessing," Gell said flatly. His voice box buzzed faintly with distortion, age perhaps, or stress. "I require closure. You require restraint. I've seen this before. The humans don't forget, but they do suppress. You'll get nothing from them but silence." Or worse, a smile. Gell leaned forward. "Do you know what they did on Ymir 9? I thought that was a mining operation. It was, until the crust ruptured. 17 kilometers of magma, they lost 52% of their personnel." "Do you know what they named their next colony ship?" Cheskil hesitated. "Phoenix. They named it Phoenix, as in rises from the ashes. These are not beings who fear death, but they fear Mars." The word hung in the air. That night, Cheskil found an old maintenance corridor on Unity Orbital. Unused, quiet. He brought a portable projector and a diagnostic pad. No one would disturb him there. He played the audio sample Lorna had given him, the one from the dome. The one she'd told him never to share. He slowed it down, then reversed it, then filtered it. And beneath the static, beneath the hiss of air cycling through vents, he heard it, laughter, not human, not machine, not even alive, but laughter nonetheless. The corridor lights flickered. He shut the projector off and sat in darkness. He stayed there for a long time. The next day, Cheskil submitted a transfer request. Not to another department, not even to another sector. He requested reassignment to a research station orbiting a gas giant with no moons, no settlements, and no record of human visitation. His request was approved in under an hour. No one asked why. The medical bay on Unity Orbital wasn't built for comfort. It was functional, fluorescent, and always carried the faint tang of antiseptic and ozone. Frederick sat on the examination table, his left arm resting in a brace, right leg propped on a stool. A shallow cut ran along his temple, cleaned but still raw. The nurse hadn't said much beyond the mandatory checks, though she'd hesitated slightly when she saw his name. "Pressure's stable," she muttered. "No signs of concussion." "You'll bruise like hell, though." "I usually do." She gave a short nod, then turned and exited without ceremony. The room's door hissed open again, but it wasn't another human who entered. It was Searle, a Heshari observer stationed with the Joint Interstellar Ethics Committee. Searle's appearance was hard to place by human standards, tall and narrow-shouldered, with skin that shimmered like oil under light and a face that seemed to change angles when glanced at directly. "You were cleared for visitors?" Searle asked. Frederick rolled his shoulder with a wince. "Only if they're not here to ask about Mars." "I'm not," he raised an eyebrow. "No. I'm here because you hit Cheskil. In the corridor outside Habitation Ring 7, Frederick nodded slowly. "He kept asking. He claims he simply offered you a drink. He said the ice reminded him of Martian regolith, then asked if I'd ever seen it melt." Searle's head tilted. "That was unwise. He's lucky I only hit him once." There was a pause. Neither of them moved. A monitor beeped softly behind Frederick, tracking his vitals with clinical indifference. "I'm required to submit a report to the Conflict Resolution Board," Searle said. "Fine. However, I've decided to include a note that Cheskil's behavior was provocational and culturally negligent." Frederick looked up. "Didn't think your kind believed in cultural negligence." "We didn't, until we met humans." He gave a dry chuckle, then shifted, grimacing. "Do I owe you a story now?" "No," Searle said, "but I'd like to offer one." Frederick frowned. "That's new. Last cycle, I was stationed on a research vessel studying the remnants of a collapsed artificial moon near Drales 3. We found a human beacon lodged in the debris. It was over 100 years old." Frederick gestured for him to continue. There were no logs, but there was a message, carved into the side of the casing, not transmitted, not encoded. Just scratched in manually. What'd it say? It read, "Next time bring more duct tape." Frederick laughed, then winced again. "Yeah, that sounds about right." I've come to the conclusion that humans rely on humor to process threat, only when we're not allowed to punch it. Cyril's eyes dimmed slightly, a Heshari expression somewhere between agreement and curiosity. Then I'm curious, Cyril said. Why does Mars remain off-limits to your own kind? Frederick leaned against the wall behind him, breathing slow. Because we realized not everything has to be understood. Some things you don't fix, you just leave them behind. But your species rarely leaves anything behind. You dig, you terraform, you colonize, you analyze failures to improve success. Frederick stared at his bandaged arm. We did analyze it, we just didn't like the answer. Cyril waited. There's a concept in your language closest to what? Evolutionary selection through environment manipulation. Adaptive dominance. Frederick nodded. Humans do that. We adapt so fast we forget we were ever something else. But on Mars, we weren't adapting. We were being shaped. Cyril's shimmer paused. That's not possible. Mars lacks the biospheric complexity to it wasn't biology, it was something else, something under the surface. Not intelligent in the way you or I are, but aware. We cut into the crust and it responded like a nerve ending. We ran simulations afterward, none of them predicted what happened, but all of them agreed on one thing. What? If we'd stayed another month, we wouldn't be human anymore. The room fell quiet again. The monitor beeped. Frederick flexed his fingers slowly, testing the range of motion. The brace creaked but held. Then why did you return? Cyril asked. I didn't. I just never left far enough. Cyril's head turned slightly, then straightened. The Ethics Committee recommends no disciplinary action. You're cleared to resume duties within 72 hours. I'll file the report. He turned to leave. Hey, Frederick said. Cyril paused. You ever feel like there's a version of you in a place you've never been, just waiting for you to find it? Cyril considered. No, Frederick nodded. Then don't go to Mars. Cyril left without another word. 3 days later, Frederick was back in the maintenance tunnels, not because he liked them, but because they were the only part of Unity Orbital that still used manual ducting. He preferred things you could take apart with a wrench. The noise, the heat, the grit, it all made sense. He was tightening a loose vent bracket when a pair of elongated shadows passed the corner of his vision. He didn't flinch. He waited until the footsteps paused behind him. You're late, he said. We debated coming at all, said a voice like dry wind through reeds. Frederick turned. 2 representatives from the Cathari Intercession Council stood there, both wrapped in iridescent layers that shifted with their breathing. The Cathari were known for 2 things: their insistence on speaking only once per encounter and their obsession with boundaries. You wanted data, Frederick said. I told you it wasn't for trade. We offer no trade. The taller one stepped forward. Only return. Frederick blinked. Return of what? The smaller Cathari held out a sealed containment cylinder. Inside was a fragment of alloy. Twisted, dark, and faintly humming. Where did you find that? Frederick's voice was low now. It was ejected from Martian orbit, said the taller one. Autonomously. It targeted our survey drone and embedded itself in the hull. No propulsion, no signal. It moved as if it knew. Frederick took the cylinder without touching it directly. You should have left it. We did. He looked up. We sent it back. That is its return. Frederick turned away and slid the cylinder into a lead-lined containment locker. Do not speak of this again, he said. Neither Cathari replied. They didn't need to. They vanished down the corridor, their forms bending light in ways that made the walls forget they'd ever been there. Later that night, Frederick sat alone in his quarters. No lights. Just the low hum of life support systems and the faint creak of metal under pressure. He stared at the locker. Still sealed. Still humming. Then he stood, walked over and opened it. Inside, the fragment was gone. In its place, a single line etched into the metal floor. I stayed. He closed the locker, locked it. Then he sat back down and did nothing at all. Unity Orbital filed no report. No alarms sounded. No security breach was logged, and from that day forward, no species, no delegation, no curious researcher ever asked about Mars again. Not because they feared it, but because they finally understood why humans did.